We've heard a little bit about this at the PCA General Assembly this year, so would love for you to just take a minute and tell us more about the program, tell us about the philosophy behind it and how it came to be.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important kind of first of all to say that there's never really a rationale there doesn't ever need to be a rationale for studying theology beyond studying theology. I think this is part of the lesson of the story of Mary and Martha, right? Jesus says of Mary, she has chosen the good portion. So anytime we have the opportunity to step aside from kind of busyness of ministry and to dive more deeply into the Word of God, to think about God and how everything relates to God, I think this really needs no justification. But there are a couple of more kind of immediate contextual circumstances that motivated us to pursue the THM degree, offering the THM degree now. The first one relates to something that Mark Knoll calls immediatism. Immediatism, at least as Knoll uses it, is a kind of characteristic that he says has characterized evangelicals, and I would include kind of our Reformed camp as well in this for the last several decades. It's a kind of foregoing of long-term difficult endeavors for enterprises that have more immediate, or at least evidently immediate payoff. Evangelicals, and again, many Reformed people as well, have done, a lot in terms of cultivating personal brands, in terms of developing the art of conference speaking, writing short blog posts. And while these things all have their place, I think, in the kind of catechetical training of Christians, when this becomes the sort of primary focus of a movement and of churches, you end up selling yourselves short when big crises come around. And I think that some of the challenges that we're struggling with right now are because we have given in to what Noel calls immediatism. And so the THM program is designed to provide deeper training, the ability to acquire expertise in both biblical studies and theology. The second kind of motivating factor for us, though, was a sense, and Dr. Allen and I have talked about this a lot over the past 10 years, especially. The second motivating factor was the idea that the number of institutions that were providing the kind of advanced academic training in the Bible and theology that would really equip the church with the wisdom and skill that its teachers and pastors need. Those kinds of institutions were on the decline. They weren't offering the kind of training they used to offer. And so again, that made us think this was the right time to step in and offer the THM program. And so the hope is that this will be a degree that both those who are interested in going to get further training at the PhD level, this will well prepare them for that. But it'll also provide training for those who just want to see a deeper and richer study of scripture and theology in the local church.
That's great. Yeah, I see that there's a movement now to like the pastor scholar type. Is that essentially what we're shooting for?
I think this will really well serve that movement.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you sharing a little bit about the philosophy. Would love to turn to you, Michael. Just tell our viewers today, how is the THM going to be administered here on our campus? What is that going to look like? Tell us how long the program will be, all of those details.
Yeah, those are all terribly important. So the THM is a post-grad degree where you're doing fewer hours than, say, our MDiv, but you're doing more advanced work for each of those credit hours. And we envision that being accessible to people here, folks who already live in Orlando, maybe current students who stay to do this, folks who come from other RTS campuses, other seminaries, they relocate. We'll be thrilled to have them here. And they can get through the program on site in 1 year.
Okay.
We also expect, though, to serve a lot of students, folks who may be pastoring already, folks who may graduate from here, go on, take a call to a church, and want to slowly plug away at some continuing advanced education over the next season of life. Folks who do the part-time route going from a distance, they can still get through the program in as short as 2 years, though they might take a slower pace. But it's designed to be accessible to both of those groups. It's not onerously long, it's 30 credit hours total.
Okay.
And you're doing courses that are 3 credit hours each. So doing the math, it's not a massive curriculum. It's meant to be a repeated deep dive into various subjects of significance, figures and texts of consequence, the kind of things that keep repaying study in years to come and decades of ministry. So those are some of the basics.
Yeah, so I understand too, there's a thesis optional. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So some people will want to write a more significant thesis, and there'll be an application process for students who are not only excelling in their earlier work to be admitted to the program, but those who excel in their early work in the program to apply to write a thesis to be paired with an advisor either from this or another RTS campus.
Okay.
That's going to be something probably appealing to folks who may be strongly considering further PhD work. It's not necessary for that. The program's designed such that you're going to be repeatedly writing the kind of essays that make for ideal samples to send to doctoral level programs. So you'll have a number of cracks at that, but the thesis enables you to dive more deeply. It takes 6 credit hours, so that's a significant portion of your 30. And some students will really benefit and thrive and do a great job, and that'll be the first step toward ongoing research in a field.
Great. Well, could you tell us a little bit about the 2 emphases that are going to be offered through that program?
Yeah, this program is meant to draw us away from the kind of immediatism and to really invest in things that are perennial. And so the 2 areas are simple and straightforward: biblical studies, Christian theology. Biblical studies will be looking a host of seminars. Some will be on specific books of the Bible, exegesis of Malachi. Some will be related areas, language research, whether it's looking at current issues in Septuagint research or it's advanced work in other Semitic languages that help us better interpret the whole of one or both testaments.
Great.
On the theological side, we'll be doing seminars in systematic theology topics, divine attributes, or anthropology, or we'll be doing classes on particular figures, texts, and movements, whether it's a course on Augustine's great text, City of God, or it's a class on Calvin's Institutes, or it's a seminar tracing themes through the medieval or the Reformation or modern periods. So those will be the 2 main areas of focus.
Yeah. Now tell us a little bit about how the semesters would be broken down between the fall and spring and summer and winter. What are the modalities?
Yeah, so we'll offer classes in all 4 terms, winter, spring, summer, fall. And fall and spring will operate in parallel to our traditional academic calendar here. Courses will be offered in residence here on our Orlando campus over the course of our 13-week semesters.
Okay.
At the same time, we'll always offer at least one, if not more, of those classes available via Zoom to folks elsewhere. And so that's going to be a 13-week movement with courses in both biblical studies and theology, where you're gradually working through a seminar. In the winter and summer, the modality shifts and courses will be offered in intensive format.
Okay.
We'll occasionally have a Zoom course, particularly for language sequences, but the bread and butter of winter and summer is going to be students reading, coming here for a week, an intensive seminar, oftentimes drawing on faculty experts from other RTS campuses or even occasionally other schools.
Okay.
And then returning home and writing up a final research paper in response to the seminar.
Yeah. Was curious to understand there's going to be some directed reading courses. Is that going to be a part of that as well?
Yeah, so there's going to be a small group of directed reading courses where in sort of the basic areas of early Christian theology, modern Christian theology, Old Testament and New Testament. Students can take a term, and we have a pre-prepared bibliography.
Okay.
So they work through classic texts, whether it's a perennial topic or a very recent modern topic, but they work through the main primary sources under the guidance of one of our professors. And that's meant to help provide broader awareness of the field, and to really prepare you to step into further advanced research in that field, knowing some of the heavy hitters, some of the most significant texts intimately, kind of from the inside out.
How would you say the reading would differ? Because I know with our master's program, it's usually 5 to 10 books in the neighborhood of people reading. What would you say you think the reading content would be if you had a ballpark?
Sure.
idea?
Yeah. So, I mean, the average THM class is going to be in the ballpark of about double your normal MDiv course.
Okay.
There's also going to be a much more significant expectation that students themselves are contributing to the class. We describe seminars.
Mhm.
One of the big goals here is initiating people to participate in the academic search themselves.
Yeah.
So they're giving brief presentations regularly on a class reading, and they're practicing guiding others into a text. They're at the end of a seminar, they're doing their own research, and they're presenting sort of a state of affairs as they're preparing their final paper. They're probably not going to read an entire paper to the seminar, but they are going to give a presentation of what they're working on, what they're finding, how they're organizing it.
Sure.
This is initiating men and women into the academic tasks, not just of reading deeply, of studying carefully, but researching,
Mhm.
Getting familiar with the field, and becoming folks who can find knowledge on their own at a deeper level.
Yeah.
And that provides opportunities for folks to develop the kind of technical expertise they need around certain texts. So whether it's kind of original languages, or also realizing that there's a whole history of conversations around particular texts and knowing that literature. And so it's not just the amount of reading you're doing, it's the kind of reading you're doing that really will equip you for kind of more advanced.
So the structure of the
research.
course is going to look a little bit different than your traditional master's course in the sense of lecture style or, reading and responding.
And a traditional MDiv student is doing a bunch of classes at a time.
Mhm.
Here, you're going to focus on one or maybe two typically at a time. So deeper dive into more focused areas.
Yeah, that's great. And so you've used the term a little bit, seminar versus class. Is that really what you're going for in this description as you're stating that?
Yeah, I mean, as we think about that, a seminar is really meant to be a participatory experience. There's no doubt going to be an expert, and all the people teaching here are going to be teaching in areas where they've got expertise. There will be lectures. There will be unique roles played by professors in that regard. But there's also meant to be an expectation that you're apprenticing students themselves, and that takes them participating more actively, playing even a leading role in small segments of class. And so that seminar experience is the kind of thing that gives people real responsibility as they go and research and read, as they think about how they might present papers or workshops in various academic or ecclesiastical settings. It prepares them for real life skills that'll matter if they want to go further in the study of theology and the use of it.
So I want to dive in a little bit to the professors. That's been a common question that has come up. Obviously, we're doing the THM program here on the Orlando campus, but was curious what professors are going to be teaching, during the fall and spring semesters. What was your takeaway on that?
I mean, I can give a broad rubric, and then maybe Scott could mention some of the first ones. Broadly speaking, most of those fall and spring seminars, because they'll be mostly in residence here, though not exclusively, most of those will be taught by Orlando faculty.
Okay.
With just the rare person on the remote live Zoom feed for a class like that. At the same time, the winter and spring, most of those professors, though not exclusively, that's where we'll be drawing experts from elsewhere in the RTS system and occasionally bringing in someone from another school who is a great exemplar in a certain field. Those all have exceptions, but that's sort of the overwhelming breakdown of staffing classes.
Yeah. So Scott, can you tell us some of the classes
Yeah,
and
so
teachers?
I mean, perfect example of the last point Dr. Allen was making. So in January, the first two classes will be offered by two professors, one from within the RTS system, one who recently left the RTS system, but Chad Van Dixhoorn will be teaching a class on the theology of Samuel Rutherford. He's working on a very big project that's translating a number of Rutherford's works right now. And so students will have the opportunity to really get in at ground zero on Samuel Rutherford studies, which is a great doorway to just broader 17th century Reformed theology. The other class that'll be offered will be a class on reading the New Testament with the apostles, reading the Old Testament with the apostles by Ben Glad. So this will be kind of digging more deeply into an area that is really Dr. Glad's expertise, use of Old Testament and the New Testament. And while Dr. Glad was RTS Jackson, he's now working with the Gospel Coalition. We're going to be really happy to have him back on campus doing that seminar for us.
And I understand Chad's teaching at the Charlotte campus as well.
Chad's at the Charlotte campus, that's right.
Yeah, that's great. So I was curious, even got a couple questions that have come up already. Dr. Allen, what are some of the admissions requirements for the program? What are some of the things that are going to be important for people to qualify for this THM program?
Yeah, so the first things to say are that the THM is a post-grad degree. And so couple things that are relevant. First of all, folks need to have a regionally accredited bachelor's degree. And secondly, they need to have an MDiv or its academic equivalent. In this case, we define that as 61 master's level hours or more, including at least 2 semesters of Greek and 2 semesters of Hebrew.
Okay, so Greek 1 and 2 and Hebrew 1 and 2 as an example.
A number of our students, as with so many of the students coming through this and other RTS campuses, will have far more than that. But that's going to be the basic minimum requirement, 2 semesters of each. Along with that, there's also an expectation, and this is a firm requirement, of a minimum 3.25 GPA in that master's work. So this is a more advanced theological degree. It's a postgraduate theological degree. So, the GPA, as well as that prior work, whether it's seminary or divinity school, those are going to be really pertinent. Once folks are here, before they step into their first Hebrew Old Testament or Greek New Testament course, we'll have a competency exam to make sure that they are functionally up and ready to run. But admissions dependent simply on showing the transcript of those 2 courses.
I can talk a little bit about the application when it's going to be open. We're actually still in process with ATS as far as the accreditation goes, but we're looking to see that approved by October 1st. Is that the case currently? Everything's going well?
That's what we understand, yes.
All right, great. Well, glad to hear that. So essentially what that means is that applications are going to open on October 1st once we receive that ATS approval, and the program is actually going to get started in January of 2025. And so that's the expectation of the timing. A little bit about the tuition costs. Tuition costs will be $650 per credit hour. And so for a 30 credit program, that gives us the total of $19,500 at the current tuition rate. Obviously, some of the questions that have come up already with regard to scholarships. Right now, the church partnership is the only main scholarship that's going to be offered, which means the church pays a third, RTS will match that third, and the individual pays a third, which means about $6,500 for you as the individual, $6,500 for your church. And then RTS will take that other third. And then we are offering current RUF ministers a 67% scholarship to be able to participate in the program. So you have to be currently on staff as an RUF minister to take advantage of that opportunity. And so we're just excited to offer those. I know there's been some questions about scholarships? Is there openness to other things at this time, or this is going to be the main scholarships? Do you think that we'll offer? What do you think?
Yeah, our thought is that these are two really kind of generous scholarships. If you do the church partnership, you end up only personally paying for 1/3 of the degree. RTS is raising the other third. The church is paying a third. And then the RUF scholarship, which is generously funded by one of our donors who is, excited about both RUF and RTS. That's a great opportunity. We think that for many of the students coming to this program, because they're in church positions, a lot of churches have kind of continuing education budgets. And so we don't anticipate this being a very onerous price tag for what I think is going to be a really valuable degree.
Okay, it's great to hear. Want to take an opportunity to ask you guys some common questions that have come up. Obviously, we've been talking about this since June, so a couple months now. And so one of the common scenarios or questions that have come up is, if you're a current pastor, so say you're a current pastor, you're serving in ministry, you're serving the local church, and you've been thinking about continuing education and trying to figure out what the best option is. Maybe you're deciding between a doctorate in ministry or a THM, and trying to figure out which direction should I go. What advice would you have for that pastor or even a recent grad who's trying to determine maybe future education, either going the DMin route or the THM route? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first of all, it's great that you've got that desire to continue, not just to grow, but to find communities and institutional structure to help. Most of us can't do that alone. And so this is a great formal pathway to do that. We offer the DMin. The DMin continues to be a professional degree that's going to have a practical focus. And there's going to be a lot of students where that's going to continue to be what they likely or their church wants them to continue to do in terms of education. This is going to be much more focused, however, on academic research, either in biblical studies or in Christian theology. We don't expect that most students are going on to do a PhD, but if somebody is thinking about and really wrestling with possibly doing a PhD later, this is a great 1 to 2 year way of testing that. And if you find that you've got a hankering for it and success in it, being all the better placed to be admitted to and hopefully scholarship to a top PhD program. There are a lot of PhDs out there. They're not of equal value. We'd love our graduates to be in the best ones and the best funded.
Yeah, and we know from friends who teach in British and European universities, the THM is increasingly kind of a degree of choice because they want you to have done both the research and the kind of writing that the THM provides.
Yeah. Then there's going to be a lot of others, and you'd alluded to it, Caleb, that idea of the pastor theologian maybe doesn't envision 3, 4, 8 years of PhD study as the most enticing or possible. Fair enough. Doesn't just want to join a book club, wants something in the middle. And we really envision this as a way of providing a community, a structure, and a set of resources so that they can really refine reading and writing skills, research skills, and, to be honest, the kind of communication skills we can't take for granted. The ability to have really significant conversations about things that really do matter and that Christians have maybe debated feistily for centuries around the world over. And we want to glean from them. We want to learn from their successes. We want to hopefully avoid their failings. We want to be wise. And so this is really meant to help equip folks who want those skills so they can be leaders on their church staff, in a presbytery, a network, a denomination, in whatever parachurch ministry they might be involved in, that they'd be the folks others would look to know they're not just parroting what they read 25 years ago in a textbook. They're able to research things in an ongoing way. They're able to critically reflect and ask penetrating questions. They're able to organize thought. They're able to communicate well. And so that there's going to be a lot of people, maybe the majority of folks, where this will be the terminal degree, but it will launch them into a life of being capable and of leading theologically.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
you've used a term a couple of times now that really captures one of the high priorities both Dr. Allen and I have for this program, and the term is community.
Hmm.
So while this is an academic degree and it'll be rigorous, there's going to be high demands on students, our real intention is to form a community of learning here where students who are participating in the program feel like they're being trained and an approach to research, communication, writing, and even in a broader community of like-minded pastors and theologians, Bible scholars, and that as well, I think, is sort of an enrichment to Christian ministry to not be kind of isolated on an island, um, wondering what the next thing to read is or how to think through the current issue, but to have a community that you're a part of, even after you graduate, that shares a kind of common vision of theology and its place in Christian ministry.
Yeah. Another common question that has come up from our current students. So a lot of MDiv and MABS or even MATS students have asked, can I participate in the THM program as a part of the master's program? What is your thoughts on that?
So the answer is, in parts of it, you can participate as available, though you can't be a dual degree student. So let me elaborate on both of those. Parts of the program are restricted and solely for THM students. So winter and summer seminars are going to be THM student only. That's part of our intense effort to try and really form community, especially in those intense weeks. In our fall and spring seminars, however, as there's space available under classroom caps, we'll gladly have other master's students, especially MDiv students, involved in those seminars. They won't have the same requirements or expectations as THM students. THM students, for instance, will read more, write more, and give more presentations that I wouldn't ask an MDiv student to do. But the MDiv students will benefit from advanced seminars, whether it's on Akkadian with Nicholas Reed, or Apocryphal Gospels with Greg Lanier, or Tradition and Development in Medieval Theology with myself. And those are opportunities where they can participate and benefit from some advanced electives they might not otherwise get. Some of those will be on remote live and available over Zoom. And so students at other RTS campuses, they can participate in those electives. And that's a huge benefit across the institution. That said, all of that availability, it needs to be underlined, you can't get THM credit until you have that first master's degree, until you've got MDiv equivalency. And so you could take Dr. Lanier's seminar on Apocryphal Gospels, you'd be wise to do so, but you've not got 3 THM credits. You've got credits toward your first degree. And we'd recommend that as available, but you'll just have to take another seminar when you actually enter the THM later.
That's a great distinction.
And that protects the integrity of the degree.
And so I was curious, who is the program director for the THM program? And so
I'm the program director, which means, admissions questions go to Caleb and his team. Academic questions can be directed my way, and I'm already fielding a bunch of email inquiries from folks I expected, as well as a bunch of new friends I'm getting to know. And then once folks are in the program, I'll be their point of contact in terms of advice about scheduling, and any other academic questions that come up.
And what about the process of picking a THM advisor? Would that come later as, someone who is doing a thesis or not?
So there'll be a process. Once folks are several seminars in, they can make application. And if they've met certain markers, then they can be granted permission to write a thesis. It's not something to presume upon, and only students who are truly excelling are going to have that capacity. But that's a great goal for folks who are itching to do that kind of project. And in that case, once they've got permission, I and the THM committee work with them to identify the right advisor who'd supervise. It often will be somebody here at the Orlando campus, though it may well be someone who's an area expert at another campus.
Mhm.
So we've got the benefit of drawing
Yeah.
from across a host of experts in all these fields across a big institution.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to pull some questions from the Q&A that we've got here. One question that had come up was, what opportunities will there be for training in various research languages necessary for advanced academic work? As an example, Latin, German, French. Could you expound upon that a little bit?
Yeah, so there is, strictly speaking, not a formal language requirement, though there will be a host of language course opportunities.
Okay.
There's not a requirement because people will be coming in with both varying goals, endpoints, as well as varying competencies. We expect most people are likely surpassing the minimum language requirements of Greek and Hebrew. Others will come in with Latin or German or whatever it may be, some Semitic languages from their MDiv work here, perhaps.
Mhm.
We're going to make available a number of seminars, both to students here and students over Zoom, on a number of advanced scholarly languages. So there'll be a sequence of Latin courses. There'll be a variety of Semitic language courses. We'll be regularly offering those.
Can you say who's going to be offering the Latin yet? Or
I can't. Some wonderful person.
someone who's very well qualified.
Yeah.
You can say that.
Well, this is true across the board. We're really excited that students will have opportunity. Languages are like tools in the toolkit.
Mhm.
And so whether you're wanting to refine Latin skills so that you can read across the Christian tradition, or you want to refine not just Greek and Hebrew, but Aramaic and other surrounding languages so that you can get into the context of the Old and New Testaments. Those add so much living color to our study of classic texts. So students will have tons of opportunity to do that with real experts.
Was curious too, what about people who are working full-time? They're serving in ministry, they may be working in a secular job, family responsibilities, church responsibilities, things of that nature. How do you feel like the balance of, work and school is going to go? Is it doable for someone who's working a 40-hour-a-week job?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is. We've have a lot of experience at the MDiv level of preparing people who are in full-time ministry jobs and helping them sort of think about balancing both the kind of the daily requirements of the job with more intensive modes of study, keeping things going throughout that. And so we think we're really well prepared to help folks who are in full-time ministry with the THM as well. The neat thing about the way it's balanced is you'll have a couple of opportunities a year to come down for a week or two in July, a week or two in January, and that has its own kind of logic. You can kind of step aside from work, focus on your study. You'll have done some things before you get here. You'll do some things when you leave. But then the other neat kind of modality is what Mike's mentioned a couple of times, is the Zoom class, the remote live class, where someone who's in the context of ministry, maybe every Tuesday night they'll meet for a couple of hours with a seminar, or another night a week, and while yes, that will add something to your weekly work in terms of rigor and reading and everything else, I think it's a manageable thing to do. And in many ways, it's kind of enriching the ministry to be able to set aside, a night a week for that kind of study. So it's definitely designed to serve those who are in full-time jobs, full-time ministry.
Yeah. Do you mention the time? There are people who may live overseas or things of that nature. Do you see that the remote live would be Eastern time, like during the day or in the evenings?
Yeah,
What
it'll be scheduled with Eastern time as our barometer.
Okay.
The reality is we likely will have people from quite far in both directions in some of those courses. And so Simply using Eastern time is the simplest solution.
Mhm.
But we schedule aware of likely folks hoping to be in that Zoom screen.
Yeah.
And we learned a lesson or two during COVID,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
how to kind of manage those
Yeah.
issues. So
Mhm.
You know, those are a great option for international students. Directed readings courses are a great option for internationals or for other students who are just in a season where it's tough
yeah,
to travel that
Mhm.
term or to commit to that particular day of the week for the class.
Yeah.
And so there's different modalities that will serve different seasons for students in the program.
Mhm.
And you can be a full-time student. You can plow through this thing in 1 year if you want,
Mhm.
and go on to great things. Or you can enroll part-time and you might make it through in 2, certainly doable. Or you might linger and take 3 to 4 years if you want a more realistic pace given hard seasons and easier ones. And we're set to serve all these.
Is there a maximum time limit that you would foresee for the
There
THM?
is,
Yeah,
but
we-
no one's going to get there. They're going to be studious. They're going to take care of business.
Yeah. So wanted to just ask, I think it'll be a final question is just as far as academic progress, right? So like, do you guys see the importance or value of doing a THM in addition to like an MDiv? It's 106 credits. It's a lot of work. Does that doing a THM, does that increase a person's chances towards a PhD or, you know,
oh yeah,
what is your
absolutely. Yeah, because Dr. Allen already mentioned this. So the MDiv is a professional degree,
Mhm.
and what we're after in that is preparing generalists. Okay, so generalists who can teach Bible and theology and deal with the various practical and moral issues of ministry in a competent way. They have the resources they need, but we're not training researchers who have mastered a discipline and its literature and so forth. That's what the THM degree is designed to do, and that's what doctoral programs are looking for and for their students. The other thing we've seen, and again, just to pick up on a theme, is so many times students get to the end of their MDiv and they said, you know, I feel like I'm really just beginning to learn, and
Yeah.
I want to dive in deeper, and the
Yeah.
THM is just a perfect opportunity to dive in deeper.
Yeah. The one thing I'd add would be to say, again, there's PhD programs and there's PhD programs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there are folks who will take your credit card and get you a degree.
Mhm.
And in almost every case, those are not worth our students' time. We want our students to be ready to be in rigorous programs where they're going to learn from the best, be challenged, where they're going to be a witness, oftentimes in a contentious setting. And they're going to be well placed to be real leaders in the church and academic worlds. And so for them to be able to get into the best programs, to get the scholarships, which are really competitive,
Mhm.
this is going to be a remarkable setup for that, where someone who might be able to get into some very average PhD programs and wouldn't have a shot at getting funding,
Mhm.
this is going to be a time that's really going to hone those skills, strengthen their application, and set them up to aim higher and hopefully to not have to pay for a PhD, but to be
Yeah.
funded.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely appreciate the time for today. For our viewers, we do have a little bit of a giveaway here. We've got a 3-pack of books that we wanted to give away. So show a few of these things here. We've got The Trinity by Dr. Scott Swain. Nice little green cover there. We also have Reformed Catholicity by both Swain and Allen here. And then we also have Christian Dogmatics as well. And so we have a little giveaway that we're going to do for those who have participated in our webinar today. We'll send the winner of these books as well as some RTS swag as a part of that. So we're really excited to have you a part. Would love to have you apply for the THM program. As I mentioned earlier, THM applications will open October 1st. For those who have been getting content from us, we'll continue to update you with news regarding the accreditation as well as the classes, and hope to have a schedule here soon this fall of the upcoming classes that Scott mentioned, as well as Dr. Allen. So thanks for joining us and have a great day.